Here are two scripts. Just completed the Star Trek one and edited it. Transformer one yesterday. It is 22nd of February. The Star Trek one is set in the 2406, and it has to do with Valentine's Day, but in space. And it's a quest story. Whereas the Transformer one is a different quest story where they essentially move the Wrath planet back to the space bridge. That's pretty much the two stories. Yes, and they're vaguely inspired by some of Mom's stories, but they're not specifically those. Really, they're their own thing. There's like the dialogue and stuff is kind of inspired. Yeah. Anyway, there they are. Mark's cards will be here shortly, but I'm gonna film that. I don't know. Okay, this is Kal Kat, the Kal Katster, and this is very brief. Mark's cards was just here, and we went to dinner. So there was he's not involved in the production at all. He briefly looked at the scripts. Their making of this is kind of the making of both of them, because they're both at the same time. So yeah, I guess we just put the making of on the main channel and the whole thing. The Star Trek one would of course air the Star Trek story over there at the Chimera channel, because it's kind of a Chimera thing, but it also is the other channel thing. So yeah, it's both. Yeah, they're both completed. They were both written over the course of 8 days, and the Transformer one was completed about a day and a half ago, and the Star Trek one yesterday, and then looked over today. They were both looked over today. The Transformer one is better written, less typos. But it's the earlier one. The Star Trek one was done using assisted technology to microphone stuff on Mom's old laptop. Yeah. So yes, here is the Star Trek one. It's a little longer. The Transformers one is 90 minutes. The Star Trek one, Starship Locations, Legacy. After Star Trek Legacy, of course. Yes, it turns out that Star Trek Legacy is just my fan films. Yeah. And if Star Trek Legacy does come out as a real thing, then we'll know that they are definitely copying us. Okay. So here's Starship Locations Legacy. Another episode in the Legacy saga. This one is very loosely based on some of those other Canary Space stories and Starcracker stories. Canary Space, Starcrackers becoming Space Vanguards. You don't need to know any of that because it's completely rewritten as a Star Trek story. And so Cupid's reunion is also based on, inspired by the Lower Decks TNG episode from 1994. Renee Echeverria, Ron Wilkinson, and Jean-Louis Mathias. And on What You Leave Behind, Deep Space Nine, 1991. What You Leave Behind, Deep Space Nine, 1999 by Ivor Stephen Bear and Hans Beimler. That's where they got Boimler from, incidentally. Spelled a little differently, but no, it's him. No, it's not. And The Last Roundup novel by Christy Golden, 2002, which is about the old crew going on their last mission after Star Trek VI. And Old Friends, New Planets, Star Trek Lower Decks, 2003 episode by Mae Darman. And Star Trek Picard, The Next Generation, TNG by Terry Matalas et al., 2023. Now, you don't need to know all that. All you need to know is that Crass is now the captain of the Chimera A, and Ezri Dax is retired because their symbiote is well over 320 something, 350 something almost. And she and Nick are exploring the galaxy, I assume. We have a bioship from the last episode that was mentioned, and to us that we did the Chimera movie right after the other one. So the Chimera movie right after the show. It should have been a year later, but we did the Chimera movie after the show and set it a year later. This is a year after that. This is 2406, butting up against the beginning of Star Trek Online, the game. But the star date is the call letter on the ship. Don't need to know all that. All you know is that, and the Starship concept is in it, and as well, and we don't see Chica in that one, even though that's her ship. We see Beckett Mariner is the captain of the concept in the story, and we do see some of the lower decks people. The cast returns, lower decks, and some of Prodigy, but all of the original crew, the original 7 crewmen from the classic Star Trek, return. Finally, we're doing that episode. The one we were going to do, the last roundup type episode. Finally doing that. And they meet up with Picard and most of his crew from the bridge of the Enterprise. And they meet up on a strange planet, Metalis, and they go on an adventure. And you don't have to have seen Picard Season 3, because they talk about it a little bit. It's kind of like a spoof of the Reddit blogs. Did not do a Reddit blog on this one. This is just used elements of how Mom talked in emails back and forth to friends and said, okay, how would this look as a story? And as a Star Trek story, what would she have written as a Star Trek mystery story with them going to a castle, basically? The stakes are not nearly as big as this one is the Transformer one they got to move a planetoid out of the solar system. And this one is just like, oh, they're gonna. The other one, the Transformers, looks like a space colonoscopy gag. They go through a wormhole with space colon. Whereas the Star Trek one is, they do the Hidden Valley and they go to a castle and find a Cillian and some lost children of the Cillians. And they finally find that we left the Miriam children. And from the last season of Chimera, that Starship Destinies, we mentioned them, and we did not find them. And now we're going to go find them. Yeah. They found them, and they're going to go find them. This will require all of the crews from all the Star Treks to beam down to the planet. And in about 95 minutes to 100 minutes, they have to figure out what's going on. And the gag here is, my mother loved Valentine's Day because Valentine's Day. So the episode takes place on Earth Valentine's Day. And we have Roshenko has a girlfriend and a bunch of other fun stuff is going on. They directly reference the whole Cedo Jaxa thing and have figured out a way around it. As well as the Nick Locarno thing. So, well, you can just say it's a separate universe entirely if you really want to. You don't have to. But the way that we did it, or the way that I did it, is pretty funny. And, you know, the future Adamacon story or panel or whatever, someone is bound to ask. They're bound to be all flustered about trying to figure out the timeline and everything, and they're going to be putting it together. And like, oh, this thing happens here and there. And Mark Scards hasn't seen Picard Season 3 or Lower Decks. So I had to make the story without giving away major plot points of those stories. We know Picard has a son, Jack Crusher. He knows that, but he hasn't seen the rest of it, doesn't know the rest of it. So let's do that. But yeah, so there. Mainly, it's the original crew and Kirk and crew, as regenerated by the planet. The Cillians have regenerated the old crew. They're still old, and they meet up with Picard and his crew, who are getting old. They get along in the tooth too, and they go on this adventure to this castle with some of the younger crew. Even Jeremy Astor's in his 50s now, if you do all the math. So he's not young anymore. And he's married to Devon Tal. Also, we get a scene where Molly and Miral actually exchange a kiss. Decided to put that in there. I don't really particularly like Valentine's Day that much, but I thought that this year's Valentine's Day would be funny to do like an episode where the cast and crew are befuddled by it. They have to go to a planet and find this Cillian and all that. and it's bothering them. And it's similar. Actually, it's more like that weird Paper Flowers T.L. Aaron's Transformers episode, more like a Transformers episode than the Transformers story is. It isn't, but it's kind of like it. So I had them both called Legacy because I figured, why not? So there's Star Trek Legacy and Transformers. All Transformers are Legacy, and then they have a title underneath. So there, that's it. They're we'll put them together. 2 fan films. Usually takes us a week to film a fan film, and a week to film another one, and it just wouldn't take any time at all, really. So let's just do it. Actually, I've even tempted to use for the human characters that usually would be played by G.I. Joes, to actually have them be the other remaining Star Trek people that we're not going to put in the Star Trek story as those human characters, just because they're there and they're on the set and they're lying on the bed. Why can't we just use some of these other ones in there? They're not going to know that that isn't Spike if it says it's Spike or Chip or whatever. Let's just say it is. Yeah, so we use the scale. So the scale matches all the way through. I think that's kind of the idea. You can totally use the smaller ones, but kind of don't need to. I mean, you have, what the human characters you have? 5, 6, maybe? You got in the Transformer one, you got Spike, Daniel, Jenna, his son Daniel, Jenna, Rock and Doc and Hawk, a lot of Hawks. That's kind of it. What, 6, 7 humans? Just use the Star Trek people. Yeah, so it's not a crossover with the Star Trek people. It's just they're using them for the story. So yeah, you could totally do that and make it work. It's your fan film. Do whatever, It's like, and of course it is fan service, so it's what it is. Of course, it's gonna have references to fan service. No, I was a little harsh on the editing process when the Star Trek one, saying like, okay, there's certain things you want to take out, certain like extra exposition that doesn't go there, and sometimes I rewrote that exposition, it changed, it moved around. I'm my own worst critic, you see. But yeah, I think everything works out though, and the twist isn't really much of a twist, but yeah, I like the idea of conundrums and people trying to figure things out, and looking at a mystery and going to this castle thing, and it's kind of cool. No, so yeah, it uses really minimalistic sets, go motion comic, which means not very much motion, and so fan film, yeah. So I'm gonna end right here and not ramble on about anything else. This is the making of both of these. Yes, that's a teaser so far. The teaser was added at the last minute in the story to give it a punchy sort of beginning to the Star Trek story. It's a nod, homage, but you don't need to know that Lower Decks is what they're spoofing. That she's Lower Decks, but if you've been watching the stuff on the Chimera thing, and the other channel, you're quite aware of Lower Decks and Prodigy and Picard and know what we're spoofing. So you already know, and a little bit of Strange New Worlds. The premise is that it's trying to retcon by way of covert operation that Cedo was part of an elaborate experiment. The Cardassians had kept her and the others on that planet Ducala that they went after in the story, but that she was actually cloned from the dead body from the shuttlecraft to be a mole, and probably Mahoney being basically Brad Boimler's transporter double from the other show, who is allegedly killed and then resurrected. That gave us an idea. They said, well, in that episode of Lower Decks, if they can do that there, we can do that here. So that's basically what it's going on. And you could say, okay, well, it's a comedy, so Section 31 goofiness going on. And, yeah. And the concept gets to be seen briefly, the ship that Sandra Talisman mentioned. And it will appear that Mariner is the first officer on the ship, which is interesting. Yeah, so that's cool. So anyway, I'm gonna put up the bridge and do some filming on the bridge. I think I'm gonna do that next. We'll see. We'll see. Yeah, it's only like 7, so we'll see. So, yeah, this bridge thing, making of thing. We thought this was going to be clever by having this like 4-way wall. One way comes down, you break the 4th wall, and you do the other thing. Well, we had to literally break the 4th wall. But we could not arrange the bridge configuration in the old style sideways at all. So the fact that this movie has, I think, one brief scene on the bridge anyway, and then the rest they're not on the bridge at all. This is not a permanent set by any stretch. In fact, this is a mess. It bowed on the sides. And this particular bridge set, unlike the other sets, will probably be fairly useless and will have to be tossed after being used. Maybe we can use a paneling, maybe. But yeah, this is just for this movie, and it didn't pay to make a configuration puzzle fold up bridge. It just doesn't. It's being held up by the other pieces of the set. Just as it would be if it was just regular pieces of the set. So it has structural issues. It's strong, but it's messed up. So hopefully you won't see that on film. But yeah, the original bridge was something else. So yeah, we don't want to spend the money to do anything more with that, of course. So this is the bridge. That was supposed to be a semi-permanent, cool alien ship, alien bridge thing. We can still use it as an alien ship, alien bridge thing, and for the bridge in the story. But it's not. It had to be. It was a box that had been jury-rigged to be a bridge, and parts of it just became off. So, well, it had to be cut off to get it to fit in the set. It was too gamely and big. So yeah, but also it didn't dry correctly, and it came out looking like this. You won't notice it on camera because mainly the figures are down here, so you don't really notice the edges. Kind of do, so you have to cover that. Yeah, so it's not the other rooms are better than this. So yeah, that's unfortunate. So, I don't think that we're going to need to build another bridge wall, back wall set thing. I think these meeting room wall sets will work just as well because it's a fan film thing, and yeah, who's going to go, wait a minute, that's the same wall as in the other one? It's like, no one's going to complain. And it works. It looks like a bridge. It's a little more cramped. Might have to change the script a little to say it's not the Chimera that Class is in command of, but some other smaller ship temporarily while it's being refit. That'd be kind of funny, actually. Yeah. So so that would make it looks fine. I think these walls totally work. That other thing on the ground. We could go through all the trouble of So, originally when I started the even before there was a script, I had attempted to use an old Amazon box and some pieces of some stuff, which was rather ridiculously overdone. I don't know why I did that. I should have just gone to Home Depot, and it would have been way cheaper to do that a couple of weeks ago. It would have been way cheaper. Should have just gone to Home Depot and cut up a box. It's way cheaper than getting pieces that are cut already. That's more expensive. Well, now I know. Don't do that. Yeah, just go get a box. paint it. Get a box. Paint it, cut it yourself. It's cheaper. Well, anyway, it's totally cheaper if you're going to cut it up anyway. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to have this cool thing where the walls would fold down easily, and then you could just even them out and put the bridge in the middle of the thing. And considering that the story, I intended to have them be on the bridge for like maybe 2 or 3 pages anyway. It wasn't like a battle scene. It's not going to be an intense scene. They just meet the alien and the alien takes them. We don't really need the bridge. So why I made an elaborate bridge that had basically melted because it was not lying correctly because it didn't dry correctly. I don't know. With an old cheap box that just didn't work out. So yeah. Yeah. Use new stuff, but use cheap new stuff. So yeah, but I had these other parts for what was going to be the meeting room scene later. These other walls, and I was like, I'll just make that the bridge. No, who's gonna go like, wait a minute, that's not what the bridge looks like. Nobody knows what the bridge looks like. I'm assuming that since it's only been a year since the events of the Bioship story, that she is not on the Chimera. It's another ship anyway. So she's temporarily on one of the other Cillian ships, and in command of it. And maybe she doesn't end up on the Chimera. Maybe that other timeline 2390 thing is a little off on that one. Maybe she ends up some other ship. Maybe the timeline changed. Maybe Q was messing with them. Could be any number of things. It could be Q's messing. It could be a number of things. It could be that this universe isn't even the same universe because they go and they encounter Picard instead of Lucky Clerk in this story. Q and Picard. It's Picard. So yeah. In this fan film. So yeah, it's Star Trek Legacy. It doesn't need to be. Yeah. Well, why go through all the trouble of all the extra when you don't need to? Just shoot the footage on the thing you have and just use it. Who's gonna go like, oh, that doesn't work? Nobody has ever complained about the Star Trek fan films and Transformer fan films, the sets looking off or something. No one's ever done that. No one's done that. I've had family members complain that they were a little long or that they were nonsensical, but they're parodies. They're supposed to be long and nonsensical. Well, some of them like them. But yeah, they're not really. They're fairly straightforward if you follow the story. They're not. Yeah, the dialogue is dialogue. I mean, yeah, I've had family members complain about how the dialogue isn't is off or something, or it isn't really though, because I was using stories from Transtech or whatever, or coming up with ones on my own. People talk like they talk in the story. It's science fiction. They're going to talk a little weird in science fiction. But you're going to understand it. Even that Transformers episode with the Tarn aliens on the planet, you could understand what they were saying, even if they were, hey, we're talking to us, going to the planet Tarn and finding things out. You can still tell what he's saying, and go to the planet Tarn and find things out. You can still tell, So it's like, yeah, it's fine so far. That scene we already shot, Bailey. Yeah, that bridge thing wouldn't have worked. It was another thing that's wrong with the bridge thing. That thing that I made is because it didn't set properly and the walls bowed this way. The inner walls bowed out, so the whole thing is all wavy. There's no way the figures could stand still on there. They'd fall right off. They'd fall over constantly. And considering the bridge scene in this movie is probably 2 minutes on the bridge, maybe 3. Just use this one. Yeah, just use it. It's fine. No one's going to go, oh no, it doesn't quite look like the other bridge. Well, yeah. Considering that most of the Transformers fan films out there, where they spend like hours doing a stop motion thing, the stop motion thing visually looks cooler. Yes, it does. However, you guys skimp out on the sets, so there. If you're gonna do something like that, don't skimp out on the sets. I guess because the lighting is difficult. Because if they're doing a stop motion, it's difficult to match the lighting of the set behind the figure because you could like the different times of the day. Well, that's why you have lights in your house. And when you do your set, lit your set. You have the lights on the whole time with the light in the same, so the lighting doesn't go, white balance doesn't go haywire. That's how you do it. You keep doing it, but I don't want to do stop motion. I don't want to show them transforming or whatever because it's too hard. Yes, it is on the cheap, but that's the thing about it. That's what it's all about, on the cheap. So yeah, yeah. I don't want to spend anything more new on stuff that already exists. So. Yeah, so this is a slight change of the captain's log, and another change ought to do. And just say they're not on the Chimera A at all. They're on some other ship. Yeah, maybe they hijacked the flyer and they're on that ship. Okay. I took the flyer out for a spin. Yes. Maybe they're on the Klingon bird of prey. There's only like a dozen of them. I don't know. Maybe. Probably not. It looks. The bridge looks to me like a cross between the one that I built there. Looks like a cross between the Battle Bridge and the Voyager, like an Intrepid class ship or something. But the captain's chair is in a different spot, and there's a helm and a navigation combined with the tactical in the other one. So it looks like a Voyager and then crushed forward like Voyager / Enterprise E kind of thing. Maybe it's a Saber class. That'd be cool. There's got a few of them that kind of look like that. Maybe it's that. Maybe it's the concept from the beginning scene. Maybe they went on the concept to be on her ship. I don't think it is though. I think it's another ship that's similar to it. But yeah, it's not the Chimera. It clearly is a smaller ship that they're on. And yeah, so easy enough to change some lines around in the script to say like, okay, they're not on the Chimera A. They're on some other ship they had to borrow for the mission to the planet. And you think they would anyway. They're going to go to Metalis. They probably don't want a capital ship flying around there. They probably want more of a covert ship. Some kind. Yeah. So, yeah. Maybe they're on the Cali class, California, San Jose. Cali 2 class, San Jose. Sure, why not? But yeah, they've got fun. The concept is similar. I'm not going to build the concept model. The concept. It's just going to be one of the ships in the story. Yeah, probably use footage from the other episodes because we filmed a lot of footage. Planet Metalis. Huh? Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, there it is. Yeah. Just watch the dailies. It's the next day. It's the 24th. Yeah. Okay. The dailies. Okay. So go over the scene with Molly and Miral in front of that black background. Not only is my head visible as a shadow on the set, but also other things that could be fudged. But why fudge it? I mean, you've got this film is just digital film. Just reshoot it. And also, the angle is weird on them. It's because you were on the set and you're like, oh, I'll just film them over here, stage right, and I'll just have them stage right, and they'll be on the left as you see it, but stage right, and they'll be over here, and the angle will be all funky, like the camera jumped over to the stage right. That it does a lot, and yeah, there they are, and they're kind of like crushed into the. I think the idea is they're on a hollow screen thing in his room, and yeah, they'd be to his right, but they'd be to his right, yeah, but to Mahoney's right, but it looks a little weird. It looks forced, like they're literally like, okay, we're at the edge of the set with the camera, and we can only show the edge of the set, so let's just do. That's what happened. It was the edge of the set. It looks like that's what it is. When you have people on a view screen, you usually do a direct Yeah, it's the 360 1 and 3 rule being broken. So you want them at the center when they're talking to him, them centered because they would be talking to him on the screen. He would be looking at them, so they wouldn't be to the left unless somehow the security camera is in his room is visually static. I mean, it just looks weird. Also, the other scene is the space bridge. That's the bridge. The bridge you built last night. Just make it the concept in the San Jose. Just say that's the two ships that are there. Change the dialogue because they're kind of similar bridge-wise, and I figure the concept isn't a big ship, and the San Jose isn't a big ship either. You figure, well, if it's the Cali 2 class San Jose, it's gonna be pretty small. It's a saucer section that's almost as Next Generation size, so that's big, but I don't think it is. I think the Cali class ship is smaller than the Enterprise G. Enterprise. It looks visually like it's roughly the size of the classic saucer section, or slightly smaller, and it has those jets underneath it, the warp engines. We have some models of that. We don't need to repaint any models to say USS Concept and USS San Jose. It just is them. I suppose you could put a new decal over the Young Saw, and just, or the Jason David Frank, and just put a new decal on it and say, oh, this is the other ship. It's not that one, it's the other ship. Which they did in Star Trek a lot. You could just reprint the decal and just paste it on the ship. And then film the ship. It doesn't do anything, it's just on its way. Also, the part where Mahoney wakes up from his dream, and then they jump to. I don't want to expand the teaser. It's just a teaser, right? I wouldn't say we need to expand the teaser at all. I would put some sort of a captain's log of a close up of Mariner, saying in the teaser, saying after the girls talk to Mahoney, and they're not in the movie at all after that. Mom would not have approved of that scene where they kiss. If she would be like, "Oh, don't do that, oh." Well, yeah, but I thought it was funny, so I put it in there. Yeah, they're not doing it for his benefit. They're doing it to gross him out. That's what they're doing. But yeah, so he's the proxy in the story. We also they do explain it. I mean, Mariner does explain. Oh well, we checked out the site of the shuttle disaster thing, which Picard probably checked out 2 years earlier. My guess is it is in canon, which is probably overthinking it, is that the Cardassians already had her DNA before they captured her and took her out. That's why they took her out, which is funny. In the other version, and messed up. And it is a senseless death scene. It's stupid. It was like in the movie, in the show, it was like why, you know. That has dozens of other crewmen like survive, even being adopted by Worf and stuff like that. So it's like, why is this one? It should have been more satisfying. It should have been Locarno. But no, our Locarno is Locarno. According to later dialogue in there, it's actually him, and the clone who doesn't. The one in the lower decks doesn't act like him anyway. The one that blows up the planet, and they say, "Oh, it's Planet Locarno," which they wouldn't do. It's Silly Trek though, but Lower Decks is Silly Trek. It's the same thing. It's Mike McMahon's version of Silly Trek, so it's fine. They should not take this seriously at all. So the fans, but looking at this later on, will probably be writing up a long 50-page diatribe of how this could possibly happen if this happens here and then that happens over there. Just take the different timeline, or it's just being silly, or whatever. Because it's Star Trek, it's science fiction, it's fantasy at this point. So, yeah. So, yeah, reshoot the mural volley scene. Just reshoot it so they're at center in the shot. And then dialogue from Mariner over a voiceover thing. Yeah. Or something. Maybe you don't even really need that, you know. You almost don't, because Liza went to look for it. So. We don't know how much time passed between the bad dream nightmare scene and the other. In fact, it must have been no time at all, really. So maybe she just looked it up. Like, I looked it up in the records. It said, the Section 31 records. Yeah. I don't want to add too much more. I don't want to overthink that. I just want to, like, maybe she had... okay, instead of a captain's log, there's a scene where Mariner, a real brief scene, right after the talk with the girls. And she's talking to Sandra Talisman. And Sandra Talisman tells her what happened. Oh, I sent a ship over there months ago, and we know what happened. Yeah. And then she goes into a ready room to talk about it. Something like that. So it's just like, okay, because it seemed like they rushed it, like there was a scene missing. A little bit of scene missing. Although she kind of explains it. Yeah, there's a little bit of a gag scene missing there. Before she talks to the commander guy. Okay, slight script revision, which you won't notice on the film anyway. This is the last of the bridge scenes until pretty much the whole thing. The next scene involves Tam and Kestra talking to TJ, their boyfriend, potential boyfriend that they're fighting over. Well, sort of fighting over. And then we have the other ones talking, but I don't want to cram them into the bridge for that scene. Because there's other people, Rutherford and Tandy are doing something in a similar way to the bridge, but I want it to be a bigger room. Because otherwise it doesn't matter that they're being visited in another room. So the meeting room, possibly. The rest of it's the meeting room. Kind of, or lounge or something. Just because, yeah, they don't necessarily need to be on the bridge anymore. Yeah. And it's cramped. That bridge is really cramped. It's clearly a smaller ship. It's clearly the San Jose. So, but yeah, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to redress the set as another room on the ship, possibly the lounge or meeting area, and then we'll go from there. But the scene turned out great. We did a reshoot of that one scene, and then we did this scene on the bridge. But we don't really need them arriving on the bridge going over right at the planet. That doesn't need to be in there. So yeah, they're just gonna arrive there. And this is where the Q guy shows up later. Q Sulu. So yeah, he's not on the bridge. No. So yeah, it's a silly track. Going back to like some Pine Hill kind of silly track stuff. We were kind of homophobic when we wrote our PLKS parody stuff back then, and there's a lot you would know Sulu. But yeah, but now it's like just now 30 years later, it's not homophobic. They're paying homage to it. It's not homophobic. He's gay, and obviously, but so what? It's the future. But whatever. So he's like, oh my, but yes, that bippity boppity boo was ad-libbed at the end, though. That would be funny if he said that. Yeah, there was supposed to be a bridge scene in there where they go back to the bridge, go under the bridge, and then the Omega particle contacts them, and then they go back. I thought, why is that in there? That doesn't need to be in there. They're just in the meeting room. It happens in the meeting room. It's fine. Forward part of the ship. There they are. Okay. Yeah, it's fine. No more bridge scenes, actually. There's the captain's ready room scene later on, but that's this wall too. So the rest of it will be down on the planet. This is the introduction of Sulu, and we get to see the rest of the original crew, the other 6. Spock and Scotty, Uhura, Chekhov, and Kirk, and all that. So they come back as these the androids rebuilt from the story. In the Cillian stories, if you've read the Cillian Realm stories, there are a couple of episodes that take place in the 2390s, in which the before Phantom and Clerks, which is 2296, just before that, and there's this adventure they go on, and they recover old Spock from the Kelvin timeline. He's about to die. They figured out when he was going to die and where. So they go back, and they basically steal his body and go back to the present, because who cares about the Kelvin timeline? So they go back. They go back, and they're whatever. So yeah. Also, Also, in other Star Trek news, they've released the trailer for Star Trek Discovery, the final season 5. And apparently Nana Visitor has a cameo somehow. I don't know how that would work. How Deep Space Nine, 680 years earlier, has something to do with it. I don't... Mirror Universe, again. I don't know what they're doing. They're just pulling stuff out of their butt. I don't know what they're doing. We'll have to review that season. Unlike over at the Steve Shive Show, they refuse to review any Discovery episodes. I review all the episodes, because I'm an even bigger Trek nerd than the other ones are. My Aunt Martha was a Trek nerd. Mom and Dad were Trek nerds. Martha, not so much. Dan kind of is, likes Voyager and DS9. Nephew. Definitely one of the Trek expert people in terms of fans. Not I wasn't there, fans. Mark's Cards and I were also discussing the Gmelt story from 2016, which was it's 8 years ago, where a super fan, got on the trade magazines and claimed he was writing for Star Trek, which he wasn't. And the only people to dispute it were some people on Trek Core and a couple of random Voyager people. They got together and they stopped it, but it was too late. And the genie came out of the bottle, and the physics cat came out of the box, and all that. And everybody thought he was writing for Star Trek, which he wasn't. It's kind of like that. So this is the reverse of that. By calling this Star Trek Legacy, Starship Locations Legacy, a Star Trek Legacy fan film, you're basically saying, oh, we're going to catch some of that Gmelt action on our website. Basically saying, this is that thing that we're doing for Star Trek. The fans will be all pissed off. They'll be like, no, it's just a fan film. Never said it wasn't. You guys just went with it anyway, so. It's just a fan film. Yeah, if we were actually writing for Star Trek, I would think that there would be more fanfare. There would be more like, well, this guy's going to go write for Star Trek. And some are thinking, oh, is he going to go write for Star Trek Online now that the buddy from the Star Trek Online is not doing that and he's going to go over to DC? And I said, no, I don't. I'm not in the same wheelhouse. If I was on Star Trek, I'm not on Star Trek Online. But if I was, well, I wouldn't be in the art part of it. I would be the writing the scripts and editing of the stuff. I wouldn't have anything to do with the art part of it. Yeah, I don't do 3D animation. The other guy does 3D animation in environments. I don't do that. I do actual, like, physical sets. If they were doing a miniatures one, they're not. Yeah, I'm sure you'll see some interesting Kal Kat cameos, even in Discovery Season 5. Look through that trailer. Yeah, there seems to be something in there that they can say, oh, is that a Kal Kat cameo? And then I might say when I review that episode, yeah, it was a Kal Kat cameo. After all, Kal appeared in Star Trek Discovery when she went into the universe. And so it wasn't me. It was somebody else playing me, but it was clearly me. Yeah. And now there was also a guy with Lou Gehrig's disease that was in there that was in a wheelchair. And some of the fans were complaining that he was in a wheelchair. Season 3 and 4, I guess. He appeared once. But it's like, well, it's the future, so maybe he likes old wheelchairs, even though it doesn't match. It's like Stephen Hawking wanting to appear on the holodeck in Next Generation. The Stephen Hawking, he wanted to, Star Trek episode. So I was like, that's fine. So maybe it was part of a holodeck thing or something. Yeah, he's playing an alien from that time period. Maybe they just replicated him an ancient old chair from this. It's a good quality chair, I guess. Yeah, they could have made it all silvery and made it look different, but Trek fan wanted to be on the show. That's fine. You know, I'm okay with that. But yeah, so there you go. As for this, this is not really a ramble. We're gonna go on. The tape's used up. So this is B unit camera footage of the same day, a whole day shoot, and we're up to about page 30, 29, 30, somewhere near a third of the way through the whole thing. And on the planet, it's easier because you're just on the planet. So, they do the V'ger catchphrase again. The next stuff up to the end of the third chapter, it should be page 30, but because there's 6 minutes of teaser, it's like 36 or something. It's a teaser and it's 100 pages, so it's over that. It's 36 pages. But yeah, they get to on the planet. So seems to be going all right. The thing about the V'ger is a hint. It's not just their catchphrase. There's some aliens they're going to encounter on the planet that are connected to the whole the missing children from the Miriam planet kind of story, and that's kind of like V'ger in a sense. He's a child. Yes, and and yes, Tam and Kestra are meant to be sort of anagrams of emoji and Abra and the other Abra. Well, but with the things kind of switched a little bit. The Abras are not, the people will call emoji an Abra. They are not actually trans. The other one is. We see which one the other one is. So they're sort of switching the roles. They actually are in real life, which is kind of fun. Anyway, so, but just so they don't know who they are, the actual real story. And they're now 19, roughly. So so there you go. And that's what second unit. So here on the Sunday, the 24th, 5th, we blazed through to the halfway point from roughly 35, page 36 to page 53. The story's 106 pages. So, yeah. So, I'm going to make some dinner for myself now. I'm not sure if that'll be any more filling today. Maybe we could get up to the end of the second act. We don't have to. We don't need to rush it. So yeah. Anyway, but yeah, going along sparingly. I should watch the dailies and see what's going on. So yeah. This is day 2. Hardly any making of, just because it's pretty straightforward and everybody's doing what they're doing. Chaos starts. Shipping. They call it shipping now, but yeah. This isn't shipping though. This is probably PG, except for the suggestion that characters are gay or bi in it. I don't think it's anything other than PG. It's not homophobic. They're just playing around with like ideas and weird things. It's perfectly fine. It's not a it doesn't do anything other than they go on an adventure reminiscent of that unsold story, the Hidden Valley stories, the Magical Land kind of thing. This is like an adaptation of one of those. Kind of. It's sort of the first contact to the other one's Generations. The Generations being the first Chimera movie after the show. This one being the second one. Although in tone, this is more like a Generation story with the captain's meeting and stuff. But in terms of execution, it's first contact. Yeah. So it's reversed. Yeah. A castle at the end. Then it's like first contact. But that's not a hint. That's just, Act 2 is in the can. Act 2, there's 3 acts. 3-act play. Well, it's separated into 5, but it's 3 acts in the story, so it's 3 acts. It's a 3-act play. It's a little long on the end chunks, but it's, Act 2. Act 2 was a little shorter than Act 1, and Act 3 will be a little longer than Act 2, but it evens out by a page or two on either side. Because originally it was 90 minutes and they got blown up to 100 minutes, 106 minutes because it needed a better teaser and all that stuff. So yeah, yeah, that's all. We're done for the evening. Yeah, there's nothing extra to add other than what they found. And now we're coming up to the final act where they figure out, where everybody gets together and they're on their way into the castle and they do the final act breakup and all that. Well, it's not really a breakup. They're coming back together, but yeah, it's basically Marvel formula for Star Trek. It isn't really Generations meets First Contact at all. It's literally Generations. It's Legacy. So in that sense, the title, that would be the only thing really. Nobody dies. Kirk doesn't die, like in Generations. That kind of thing. It wouldn't make a great Star Trek story, but it'd make a great Star Trek fan film. So that's the thing. Yeah. And then they're gonna say, "Oh, it's Legacy. Yeah, like they did Gamelt. Yeah, except not pretending like this is an official Star Trek, unlike Gamelt." That guy on the internet with this fan film. Yeah, he was pretending it was real. It wasn't real. He didn't even have a fan film. He didn't go this far. He didn't have a fan film. Anyway, so here we are. Yeah. So Star Trek Chimera was in production when that happened. So our fan film was ahead of his. That was 2019, and then the series after that. So yeah. Anyway, so that's it. So there's a planet scene on the tape that is marked 26 in the tape thing. There's a scene earlier in the story where Wilson and Alexander and some of the other people, the characters, are on the planet, and I accidentally swapped Wilson for the Mariner character. They're the same Uhura, they're just a different version. And although we could reshoot those 2 or 3 lines with her as the proper character, actually having her be Mariner kind of makes more sense in that scene. Because then Mariner and Vince would know. Then Mariner would know what's going on the planet, basically, and come looking for Vince. So So yeah, so this character got switched. Wilson Mariner got switched somehow, and I think it works anyway because then Mariner would know that Vince is in trouble and go looking for him because so she's on the planet with him. So I think that actually kind of makes sense, even though it was a screw up. It is a blooper. She doesn't say anything more about Valentine's Day at that point. She doesn't act like Wilson. It's clearly, you could clearly say like, okay, it's clearly not her in that scene. It's someone else. But yeah, it would be odd to them. They would say, why has she been replaced by Mirror? But yeah, sure. I went back to the scene and reviewed it, and I think you can get away with it having just not explaining it, because things are going in and out of space-time in the story anyway, and Mariner's there. That's fine, and they don't acknowledge it because that's their friend. They just don't need to. So maybe she's in the background of the chamber too. She's barely in the rest of the story, so except for the other stuff. So it makes sense that she would be transported there. But yeah, for 3 lines that change nothing, they're mainly about what the castle looks like. It might as well just stay it the way it is. Just leave it, and just goofy things are going on. Yeah. And in that way, she can meet Tendi and Rutherford again. You can see them in the crowd. She doesn't acknowledge them in any way, but maybe she doesn't need to. It'd be like if you were at a reunion party and saw 2 people you knew. You might walk up to them, you might not. So there's nothing wrong with the scene, other than it's the wrong girl. No one acknowledges it's the wrong girl, so... Okay, a few comments. You don't need to see me just to comment on. That's Uhura and Chekhov. This is the meeting scene. This is that. So, yeah, this is not a I have to figure out where they went. They're not all gone. So, it's not in the script. Now it is. Now this evening, before even any dinner, we have wrapped principal photography on Star Trek Legacy. Starship Locations Legacy. The next thrill-packed chapter in the Starship Locations series. We didn't think we were going to do another one, but around Valentine's Day we come up with another one. So here we are. Silly Kelly directing it. It's pretty funny, all the way through. Pretty funny. So yeah, it's probably the most flamboyant thing that we've written in some time. But yes, it was inspired by reunion stories and emails and stuff from my mother, and so kind of inspired. It had dialogue that's similar. Most of the ad libs, things like that. It came out a little long, but it's a fan film. It can be as long as it wants. It's not long as some, but not shorter than others. I figure if you're going to do a fan film, you either make it a full episode of Star Trek or make it a two-parter. So it's essentially a two-parter. Because I wanted the original crew to meet the Next Generation, to meet our Chimera crew. And I wasn't as concerned about Voyager and DS9 people meeting them. So there's only a few of those. Because they're kind of hard to do that. Yeah. It kind of hints at Starfleet Academy and Start Section 31 at the end. Those are the other things that the Paramount people are doing. I understand that Starfleet Academy would be possibly set in the timeline of Discovery, which is a mistake. They should set it during Picard's era, but they didn't ask me. Yeah, nobody cares about the last. That's why they're canceling Discovery in 3190s or whatever. Nobody really, and we're going to review it when the 5th season comes out on April 4th. We'll start reviewing it, but still, this is going into production, post-production, assembling the video, and then this is going to be out, and then you have your Star Trek Legacy thing. It isn't really what Star Trek Legacy was going to be. That was fan service as well, but people were like, oh, it's totally going to be called that because like that other story from 2016 with that guy who Beyond, just like the Star Trek movie. So if we think enough about it, they'll just do a movie. That isn't what happened, though, back in that era. That's not what happened, though. That was a completely different set of events. Yeah, and we've been over that before. But in a nutshell of with that, we can go on over there and go into that. In a nutshell, a Star Trek fan had written a Star Trek spec script, a very long, tedious Star Trek spec script, had included pictures of actors in it, as well as a spaceship, and put it up online. And Trek magazines, various different online magazines, ran with it. Like, oh my goodness, he's publishing for gonna go pitch to Star Trek. Star Trek read his script and loves him. He's gonna go put a pitch for Star Trek, and what actually happened is that Paramount Pictures contacted him. Paramount Pictures said, cease and desist with using this domain name Star Trek Beyond, because we're going to make a movie called Star Trek Beyond, and people are confused already. This set him off. He thought, oh my goodness, I get to pitch for Star Trek. That's not what they said. They gave him cease and desist. But that was revealed later. They had gone on with it for 6 months. On the Trek trades and the Trek magazines and all that. There were only a dozen people that said, no, this is not true. Why don't you ask him? And so some of us did. And yeah, it's not true. He was making it up. So yeah, we even did posts and things like that. A Voyager writer even analyzed the script and did a thing online for our Voyager writer. And she's all, yeah, this is what's wrong with it. This is why Paramount would never take this script in a million years. Here's why. I'm assuming the Voyager lady knew, how to do that. Several others chimed in, and I chimed in too. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah. Having been on the contest years ago, yeah, they don't accept submissions and solicited scripts at all. I put that up on that. That was the end of the thread on Trek Core. We had it on Trek Core. Was my saying that, I went to the guidelines website and I looked it up. Paramount said, we're not getting any unsolicited scripts. We will throw them out. So this guy was lying. He was not anywhere near the Paramount lot back then. Interestingly enough, Mark's Cards and I were near the Paramount lot. Well, mainly Disney. We were at Disneyland that very month that he claimed he was pitching. That very week, like he claimed he was pitching. Other people were, and they saw a crazy man out front of Paramount. It was probably him. He didn't get inside. We got into Disney. We were over at Disney, and our idea was ingrained in the culture, essentially leading to the masterful dud, Strange World, and what was the other one? Then I guess other guys thought it was a good idea. They made a Blue Sky movie called Nimona, and they liked the idea. So the Nimona's a better version of that idea. Princess finding a prince finding a prince kind of thing. But in that one, the princess actually sort of accused of being a bad guy, so they changed it. Whereas the original was more like Strange World with the two guys that were gay. Disney was like, we're not going to do that. We're not ready to do that. So this story is essentially, so that other story was essentially not true. But then and he claimed he was still pitching even when Discovery started. He wasn't. We weren't either. We had our own Strange Worlds series. We did our Chimera movie in 2019, and then Strange Worlds in 2020, 2021, Strange Worlds Season 2 and Season 3, and this is technically a new movie after it's only been a couple of months after the finale, but there was still some ideas left over. We still had some ideas. I wanted to do the Last Roundup. Wanted to do a little bit of the Square of Gothos idea, that Q comes back. Wanted to kind of finish up some loose ends that were left from that other season. And we didn't have to, but I thought it would be fun. So we have the classic crew who have been reanimated by some sort of demigod preservers guys. They reanimated them, and so they're not really them. They're sort of cloned androids of them running around. So it's not really them. They have powers and they can do things and manipulate space and time. They're kind of like travelers. Yeah. So they go throughout the universe. And these other guys are too, the Cillians that Josh Brahms. That's loosely based on a character from the Silly Trek games. At school on campus, Josh Braun, and he died in January of 1988, and in a car accident. It's messed up, and so we made a ship in the what later became Starcrackers, but then named after him. But then we changed that later on because it seemed a little weird. Here, a version of him shows up as the first Cillian. Technically, the first Silly Trek officially was after he died. There were other versions, earlier versions, but they were actually first Cillian. The Silly Trek universe was a little bit inspired by Jung Swan as well, which was a little later, saying your thoughts create reality and that kind of thing. And so that's kind of incurred in there, and that they sort of mixed the idea that these Q-like aliens can do this. It's a little convoluted, but you probably do have to see the other stuff first just to understand it. Yeah, and it's a nod to Picard season 3, and it's a nod to Lower Decks season 4 that just happened? Yeah, and to that too. But yeah, it's you kind of had to have seen it. So yeah, it's fine. I liked the story. It works. It ended up being a little long, but it's not a little long in that there was extra stuff that needed to be cut out. There's nothing that needs to be cut out. When I do a fan film series, everything is pretty important all the way through. So yeah, the lines and dialogue and all that. And the Star Trek fan service thing, it's all fan service because it's a fan film. So it's not meant to be anything. We're not pitching this to Star Trek. This is not Star Trek Legacy, which was the fans thought that would be a good name for it. But it's already a game, so like that other one was. So the Silly Trek thing. This is just a fun thing. We also have Transformers one, so do that one too. So the whole it's supposed to be Valentine's Day in the story, It's a little bit the Squire of Gothos, a little bit in that they mention it, and they're sort of like that guy in it. They can move people around and manipulate them and stuff. They're not as powerful as the Q, but almost. They also, we figure out what happened to the planet Miriam, City of Lost Children, and also what happened to some of the other ones. They're all adults in the story. They're not children. There are no kids in the story at all. It's just that's what they call them. Also, we kind of implied that we made fun of and implied the Jack Crusher thing with him, the actor being older than he should be, but that was with Alexander Worf as well. Yeah. So, oh well. Anyway, so that's that. And yeah, so. All right, this is Kal Kat, Calicaster on the set and on the in the runabout room, and yeah. So this is a little bit more on the making of Starship Locations Legacy, the Cupid's reunion. Yeah, Cupid's reunion. Could call it the Cupid reunion, but it's called Cupid's reunion apparently. Cupid's reunion. There was some clarification to the making of thing. I watched all of it. I'm trying to put the making of together, and there are some scenes and moments and such that are a little confusing as to what I'm saying. I don't mind the 10 minutes or so at the beginning talking about the Transformer one. There's plenty of talking about the other one. What's a little off is that, well, first of all, we don't know that this is Star Trek Legacy. It's just called Starship Locations Legacy. And it has no connection to the 2016 Gamilt thing. I don't know why I kept going back to that, but it has nothing to do with that. Tendi does, and Rutherford do. I guess that. I don't know. But yeah, but they were Mike McMahon characters. So was Mariner. Mariner's actually named after Mike McMahon's sister, apparently. Beckett. No. But yeah, yeah, so the premise of the story, which isn't hinted at in the stories, is that I wanted to do a Last Roundup type of reunion story. And about half of the original Star Trek people have died. So well, there was this convenience in Silly Trek that says that you could resurrect the dead and in some kind of form. The preservers are part of Silly Trek somehow, and they can make a copy of a person, resurrect them. So we have in the Cillian Realms books and stories online. They're more like a build your own. Well, they're not build your own adventure. They're not really. They were the Silly Trek role-playing game stories, and they were put up online on Amazon, on what it was called Kindle, and still is in some places, and it's now called Scribe. There was one of the stories was hinted at in the 2390s era. The crew of the Next Generation and the Chimera go back in time and in universe they go through the Kelvin timeline. They go to the Kelvin timeline. They rescue Spock as he's about to at the moment of his death, according to the planet, and they rescue him, bring him back to the 2391, so that he can be alive. And that's probably the premise of the Discovery episode. Might be. It's 2390 that they're going looking for the artifact. Yeah, from that time period. But 800 years. But I kept saying 700 years. It's more like 700. It's more like a little under 800 years. It's 780 years. Yeah, that's the story. From this story, but you don't have to worry about that because we're not doing a Discovery episode. Except that Spock is in this because they rescued him from out of time, and there's like a line of dialogue where they say, "Oh, we rescued him from We went back to in 2391. We went back to 2263 in the Calvin timeline and rescued him. That's all you need to know. William Shatner and George Takei and Walter Koenig are still alive, so they're in this story. They're not prevalent, necessarily not in charge of the story. Their characters, Kirk and Chekhov and Sulu, oh my, are prevalent, but not in charge of the story. They're not causing the events in the story. In other words, what's causing the events in the story is a bunch of Cillians who are man-children, like many Trekkies, are man-children. They have their leader, their charismatic leader, Joshua, has apparently activated a device, a space bridge, and he's using the device's energies to enhance their mental powers. So their mental powers are messing with the crew. That's what's happening in the story. That is not implicit in the making of. That's what's going on. So in a sense, this is a collective, kind of Borg-like, Cillian-like thing going on. A little bit related to Picard Season 3. You probably have to have seen Picard Season 3 to know who Jack Crusher is and all that stuff. But the sun. And all the gags with that. I'm not going to give away. I'm not going to go into all those details. It'd take too long. But yeah, the idea is that, like the Transformers story, which is about a planet of wrath that messes with your mind if you're a robot, this planet messes with your mind if you're a human. So it's very similar story. That messes with your mind. Give you a little bit of conundrum action. Give you a little forgetfulness. You might not know what you're doing. So that's what's going on. So in the story, we have a behaving this way, going to a certain point. So yeah. So that's I didn't make that clear in the making of, and now I have. So that's what's going on in the story, and the Chimera crew is serving temporarily on the Starship San Jose, and they go to the planet, and they encounter the crew from the classic Trek, who also have powers, and they've been brought there as well. So there's like this weird sort of thing going on. They're not behind it though. They're the classic crew that's been regenerated by the Misfit Toys planets and by the preservers of the Misfit Toys planets, and they've become sort of semi-immortal, nigh-immortal demigods of space, because Kirk would love that. He totally loved. They'd be into that. Sulu also would be into that. Oh my! And Spock would be into that. And McCoy would be just annoyed by that, which is funny. So yeah, that's what's happening. But they're not behind it. They've been pulled there as well. So that's kind of fun. And the Chimera people, who are also Cillians of a sense, they also have latent powers. We've got Tam and Kestra, who are developing their Cillian powers. They represent, Tam and Kestra represent, as we learned in the last season, we learned that they are in fact models, constructed robots, androids, constructed of the same model as the Sung and the Miriam androids. And they are, because for some reason in the silly Trek universe, we decided Riker and Troy shouldn't have kids after they were 50. They could build them, but they shouldn't actually have them. Which is kind of strange of us to do that, but that's what we do. But no, they don't have children, they don't have kids of their own. They built them. So. And it's all because of a throwaway line in Star Trek Picard when they said, Thaddeus Riker, the baby, died of an ailment that affects only silicon-based viruses or something. Silicon-based virus got it. And a human wouldn't be affected by a silicon-based virus, but a robot would be. If he was a Soong-type, advanced sort of android baby, that could grow up and become a fully adult, grow up just like a human, but he's a robot. That would be very interesting. So, just because of that one line. and his little sister Kestra grows up and becomes like Kestra. Story. So it's not directly connected to last season, but it kind of is. It's kind of sort of an update. Yeah, watch them all. Yeah. So the planet to find out about the first Cillian. The first Cillian resurrected by was technically the first Cillian, not the first Cillian, but the first Cillian resurrected by the preservers. So whatever Q group is controlling them, the Great Bird of the Galaxy or something, put him back together from a holodeck perspective. So basically, when we were kids on the holodeck on the Enterprise D, sad because Josh Braun died. We gave him his memory and personalities from the records, and the holodeck recreated him in living color, in living form. And then Q showed up, and Q was all, "Oh, this is fun." And not only did he make copies of some of the Cillians, he also made a copy of him. And, but of course, the preservers took him away because, he's dead in the real universe, and that's creepy and weird. But yeah, it's not at all like that Brie McLeod Transformer, that other story. No, it totally is kind of the same thing. But yeah, we tend to do stuff like that in our stories. The idea of a person living forever in their stories and thoughts and personalities. The idea of the Jell-O salad thing was a true story. Yeah, that was a true story. That was a weird, this weird out of body experience dream sequence thing, probably inspired by Jung Swan. At the time, very new at that time. They had, I started training there in March of '88, so it was a little after he died. So the dream wasn't immediately after he died, because that wouldn't make sense. No, it had to be a little bit after that, a little bit of influenced by the Jung Swan. So it had to have been later, even though it appeared to be earlier in the journals. It had to have been later, and it wasn't. Yeah, or either that or I had seen them, or it doesn't make sense. And there was this dream, right? It was a dream. And I meet Josh Bryan in the dream, in school, and he writes all over the board. He writes this, calculation, like a calculation. He's a math guy. Writes a calculation. Says, "This is the formula for Jell-O salad. This is a secret to the meaning of life," and everything. Possibly more inspired by Donna Brown, no relation, the teacher who was a hippie across the way, at Pineham. More so than Steve Clark, who was the other guy. Who was the other kind of pseudo-hippie teacher. So yeah. Also, this episode is episode of the series is extremely flamboyant and extremely LGBTQ friendly. Just so you know, very much a Valentine love letter to the fans of Star Trek, but also to shipping stories. Although it's very PG. Little plastic figures trying to kiss each other is nothing. So, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with them saying, "Hey, we liked each other," or whatever. And nothing wrong with that either. So, yeah, and also sort of retconning the Jack Crusher thing with his age, even though I didn't need to do that. And saying "Oh, he was a lab experiment." But I also imply that there is a previous child, or possibly another one, that Beverly Crusher had with Picard in 2365 as well, that we haven't seen. I was tempted to have it be like one of the other Cillians, like maybe the redheaded one that looks like Dr. Crusher, that you'll see in the story, who has a line, but it's not. And it's not I was tempted to make it Joshua. That would have been funny. It's not Javon. Actually, with Javon Tal, I was tempted to say how Javon Tal was the younger half brother of Jake Sisko, who appears in that. But then I decided, no, that's impossible. He's a Trill. He can't be that. No, doesn't work. They're all Sisko action figures. Just like there's 3 different Uhura action figures, and there was an error with one of them. But then we ended up writing it into the story, or I did. I ended up writing it into the story, saying like, oh yeah, and it made more sense actually writing her into the story right there and saying like, Captain Mariner beamed down to the planet during all this. She just beamed down to the castle. She said, I'm going right to the castle, beam down there, go right to the edge of the castle and go in and meet my friends and then go in. That makes sense. So she would totally do that. She would just go in like gangbusters and say, I'm here. There. Yeah, and then slightly rejiggered that ending scene. Tied it into the Worf with the hug thing as a gag, because Worf doesn't hug. Gives him a coat hanger pastor hug. Like, and then apparently then Alexander tackled him. But yeah, but yes, so that's pretty funny. Yeah. Also, I expanded slightly the Cassin's Sito reveal scene at the end, which we won't give away. You can watch it. There's two Wesleyans there. Two Wesleyans. Yeah. Our Wesleyan and the Wesleyan from the other timeline. And a nod to the Borg King Wesleyan West from that particular Star Trek Online. Yes. That's pretty much it. We'll assemble the movie. It is, was it Monday night today? We'll assemble the movie. So we have a rough cut by the time John shows up on Thursday. And then go on the weekend and make the Transformer one. Do the Transformer one over the weekend. So, hopefully we can do that. In the Transformer. The Transformer one is shorter by about 15 pages. It's 90 minutes exactly. 92 minutes. So it's shorter by 14 pages. There really is no chaff in this story. The scenes where they're going from one place to the other, they have to go from one place to the other because there's no chaff. They have to, there's no extra scenes. Yeah, some of the gags go on a little longer than usual, and whatever. But yeah, also with dialogue for a Star Trek soap opera or space opera, yeah, it is kind of flippant because you kind of have to like put characters in certain situations that normally you wouldn't in everyday life in like a mall or a job or something. But you figure they're supposed to be pseudo space military guys. They're going to talk like space military guys. And they have a certain speech to them. A certain je ne sais quoi. They'll have that. And yeah, it has been, yeah, as for some relatives complaining about about me writing dialogue, I don't think they've read any of my new stuff. I don't think they've watched any of my stuff. And if they have, they didn't get it. But yeah, the Transformer stuff was all borrowed from fan films and adapted from fan scripts from lexicons. And Transformers Mush and the Star Trek ones, actually the last one, Destinations, was the most original. It was only borrowing ideas from the other ones, writing scripts. This is also completely the stream of consciousness story. Well, it has a plot where you know, it's only inspired by mom letters and stuff and that technique. That there's a lot of dad in there too. It's not just mom. So there's a lot of that in there too. It's disjointed, but it's supposed to be because of the planet. I think that certain people that are, if they're very distractible, they won't get it at all and they'll walk away. But they'd walk away anyway. It's distractible. And if they're extremely political, they probably hate it because there's no politics in it. It's just they go to a planet and they're having fun. Because I don't want to do that. I don't want to write a story about reality. You know, like they said about write about fantasy. Don't need to have reality. It's fantasy. Yeah. So I could go on about other stuff about the nature of expertise or no expertise or whatnot. But no, I'm not an expert. It's just that I've been I've been a Star Trek fan since I was 3 years old, and long time ago, 50 years, and I know a lot about it just from it being and existing. And there's over 800 hours of Star Trek on film and TV, and there's only about 200 hours of Star Wars film and TV and cartoons. Only 200, if that. 178, I think. Star Wars. That counts the cartoons. That counts all of the Disney Plus. That counts all of that new upstart Star Wars came out 10 years after Star Trek. Star Wars. Yeah, they don't have they're years, they're decades away from catching up to Star Trek. Yeah, they're decades away. Yes. But yeah, this is not a Star Trek. It's a fan film.